I'm Mark Gallia, Managing Director of Consultancy. We're living in very interesting times. They're trying times, they're times that are creating stress and a lot of questions. And this is exactly what we're here for today. There are a number of people who joined me today, and I'd like to thank them. And we're going to ask ourselves a number of questions, and we're going to discuss these questions to try to answer some of the questions that employers and companies may have. We've launched a service that is aimed at helping organizations welcoming back their employees. And I'm sure that the questions that we're going to be asking today have already been asked in your organization. I would like to introduce our panel of experts, and I would also like to thank them once again for joining us. Our panel consists of Dr. Suzanne Zara, who is a medical doctor specializing in general practice, Priscilla Muscat, who is a psychologist, Eric Pass, an expert in marketing, and Nicholas Naudi, who is an accountant. The first question that we're going to discuss is, what is the new reality?
So, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives, and it has been tough on everyone to adjust to this new reality. I would describe this new reality as uncertainty, or as fear of the unknown. All of a sudden, there is this new virus which has made us change the way we live, the way we think, the way we work, the way we spend our free time, and the way we interact with each other. The reality is that no one knows exactly what to expect next.
COVID-19 has led to a number of changes, basically, whereby we are dealing with uncertainty, and also we are taking on increasing roles. In addition, there's also the burden of social distancing. Unfortunately, this is having detrimental effects on our psychological well-being, whereby we are seeing increased levels of loneliness being reported, also an increase in anxiety and post-traumatic stress, and also increased levels of alcohol and drug use lately. So these are a bit the detrimental effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I think organizations might not be properly prepared because this is a new situation for all of us. For organizations to take people back in, they need profound knowledge and guidance on how to prevent and to limit the spread of this disease amongst their employees and also clients. A successful organization needs a healthy workplace. There are various measures one can take, both on a personal level, such as regular hand washing and practicing social distancing, and also on an organization level, such as giving out hand sanitizers to all employees and also cleaning surfaces regularly with alcohol.
Yes, organizations should look at being prepared, not as a cost, but as an investment. I mean, just imagine how much the cost would be to the organization if just one case of COVID-19 was detected on your premises. Not only from a monetary perspective, but also from a reputational and a brand perspective. And also the ensuing lost confidence by both employees and customers alike.
Yes, and I assume that many companies have no idea what to expect, and as long as there is no vaccine, it will be uncertain how to act and how to act as a company. However, companies are essential to people's lives. Not only do they provide income to employees, they also produce or provide products and services that people need. The best measures that companies can take is to put people's well-being at the center of the matter. Companies that do not do this will lose their right to exist because people, customers and employees will compare companies with each other. And to repeat a quote from the founder of Walmart, there's only one boss, the customer, and he or she can fire everybody in the company from the chairman on down simply by spending his money somewhere else.
The concept of safety is a subjective one, whereby basically we form our perception of safety based on a number of different information that is found to affect our attitudes and also our actions. Namely, this information usually we gather it through our perception or representation of the COVID-19, and usually this lies into how we perceive, for example, the consequences of the pandemic. For some people, COVID-19 is something which is very, very serious. It is life-threatening. For others, we've increasingly noticed that they perceive it as, for example, as a normal influenza. So as you can see, the perception is a very, very subjective one, and this in turn shapes one's coping. And therefore, for employees to feel safe, the management has to focus on fostering positive and realistic representations to the current pandemic, basically by ensuring that all the preventative measures are in place, because this will help employees to feel safer. This is very important, and also by ensuring that the right information is at hand, which will enable basically employees to clarify any fears that they have, any queries, so as to form the realistic and positive perceptions. This will enable employees to feel safer, and also will ensure more efficacy and efficiency, basically. Unfortunately, failure to do so will result in a build-up of tension and anxiety. So it is very, very important.
Yes, I agree with Priscilla a lot. No one can actually feel safe unless they are given the right information and tools to protect themselves. Spending a lot of time in a confined space during such a pandemic can leave a lot of mental and psychological issues, apart from physical complications if one actually contracts the illness. Social distancing and hygiene remain the most important factors to limit the spread of this disease.
Well, this reality is very, very interesting because it presents us with a lot of unknowns. And I think that there are going to be multiple realities because we need to ask ourselves, what is this reality now that we're living when there's no vaccine? What is the reality going to be when we start easing off lockdown procedures and we start going back to work in the absence of a vaccine? And also, what the reality is going to be when there is a vaccine at an early stage and then at a later stage when the COVID-19 virus will be something that probably we'll have to live with for a very long time. So I think that it is extremely important, that it is essential that we keep communication channels open, we keep our ears very close to the ground, and as always, knowledge is power. We need to keep ourselves informed, especially at these early stages. I think that it's crucial that we keep on listening to the experts. I think that we need to follow their advice because unfortunately there are a number of people who think that they know more than the doctors and more than the experts without holding any scientific backgrounds, regrettably. I think that it is also important when it comes to business that both management and employees keep an open channel to communicate, to understand each other, to explain situations to each other, to work and to row in the same direction. And it is also important that they understand each other because ultimately our goal should be the same. The well-being, everyone's well-being, and the smooth running of a business.
Yes, Mark, everyone needs to understand that this virus is here to stay. And until the vaccine is available, this is the new reality. Employers need to provide all the necessary measures to their employees so that they feel safe to work, while employees also need to really be responsible for each other's well-being and abide by the new rules. For example, employees should not attend work if they have any symptoms. And also, it is useless separating desks and setting up barriers to promote social distancing if then employees stay at close proximity to each other at break time.
The future depends on people because as people we create our own future, and COVID-19 has shown people that serious threats can come from a very unexpected source. People will be more careful and limit their social interactions to a smaller circle. E-commerce, healthy food, delivery services and banks will benefit. Please keep in mind that trust is the new money, at least for the next coming years.
Yes, and in addition to that, I also think that the situation more than ever has highlighted the importance that companies, that employers, that organizations need to give to employee health and general well-being. There are already a number of companies that have employee wellness programs and employee assistance programs, but I think that now this has shown that employees' health and well-being is an item that should be very, very high on the management's agenda. And I also believe that this will be a deciding factor for people to take into consideration when considering an offer from a prospective employer. I will quote Theodore Roosevelt, who said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, because care is very important. We're social animals, we're social creatures, and for us, being aware that someone is taking care of us and being cared for is very important. That is the way we're wired. And I also think that the situation will provide a change in the landscape of how we conduct business. Because now more than ever, companies have seen that remote working works. It's a reality. And with the technology we have, with good access, easy access to cloud computing, mobile devices that are very reliable, people nowadays can be as productive, if not more, as they would have been had they worked from the office. So this may create a scenario where people don't need to relocate, and therefore organizations will save money because relocation is very expensive. It may also give access to people who, because of mobility issues or any other issues, otherwise, under traditional circumstances, under the old normal, because now we're calling this the new normal, they may not have been able to join a company. But now, because they can work remotely, they may be able to work for that company. So it opens organizations to more talent. And also from a financial perspective, if employees, or if more and more employees are working from home, they're working remotely, then companies, needless to say, will need less office space. And we know that office space is very costly. Real estate is extremely costly. And therefore, I think that the situation, on a positive side, has shown us that we can do things differently and perhaps more efficiently. Well, in this case, I think that the first thing that both parties need to do is try to understand each other. The willingness to understand each other is crucial in this case. And if I were an employer who is facing resistance from an employee to come back to work, I would definitely do my best to try to understand why this employee is resistant. And it's amazing the information you can get if you have an open communication, when you try to understand rather than trying to force yourself or trying to force someone to do something. Because maybe this employee is sharing a home with a person who is deemed vulnerable. Maybe this person has had certain health issues, which you may not be aware of. So it's very, very important that employers try to understand employees and try to understand where this resistance is coming from. It's also important that employees understand employers and their needs, because let's face it, there may be the odd cases, I might add, where the employee's resistance may not be justified or may not be fully justified. So it's very important that both parties do discuss this issue, do try to understand each other, they discuss it with an open mind, and try to come to a solution. I mean, if you're an employer who forces an employee to come to work, let's say, and this person shares the home with a vulnerable person, and as a result of the employee coming to work, this vulnerable person gets infected with other possible ramifications, would you be able to sleep at night as an employer? How would that affect you? This is a lose-lose situation. The employee loses and the employer loses. So it is very important that in cases like these especially, we focus on win-win. We try to understand each other, and together we work towards the same goal. Ultimately, we are all working in the same organization to reach the same goal.
As Mark pointed out, basically the management it needs to listen attentively to the arguments brought forward by the employee and try to establish both the intrinsic factors and also extrinsic factors. Is it an issue of fear or anxiety? Is it an issue, as Mark mentioned earlier on, that there is a vulnerable person living? Is it an issue maybe where there are child caring responsibilities? And I'm mentioning this in the reality that all schools at the moment are closed. So what is the reason behind this resistance? It's very, very important that we understand and we try to process it together with our employee. Another aspect which I want to point out, bearing the new reality whereby we are seeing an increase, unfortunately, in psychological issues, even in employees who had no history, no past history. It is very, very important to offer, for the management to offer adequate consultation and assessment to ensure that in cases whereby there is a drastic change in attitude within an employee, whereby you notice that from a hard-working employee always delivering, suddenly we're always noticing very low mood, apathy, and worrying signs. It's very, very important that we encourage that there is a good assessment and also that we support the employee even if the employee is working remotely. And this will ensure that we are supporting the employee to the maximum and also that the right services are roped in at the right time as well.
I think whenever telework is an option, it should be the only option in such circumstances. If telework is not possible, then vulnerable employees or employees who live with vulnerable people should find a solution with their employer. For example, they might be offered their own office or their own workspace without having to interact with other individuals. Most likely, a risk assessment will be required on site because it depends on the space available. The space will determine the number of employees and or clients who can be present at the same time. And also, good air ventilation is very, very important.
Yes, probably this would be inevitable. Office space comes at a cost. Practicing social distance measures, such as one empty desk separating the adjacent two, will entail larger office space. This cost can be partly offset by reducing the number of personnel on the premises at any one time, either by encouraging more telework or by a planned roster.
So I hope that this conversation helped you understand a bit better these very, very complex and difficult questions. And I'm sure you have more questions. If you'd like to contact us, please feel free to do so by either calling us on 2099-4444, or you can send us an email at info@quadconsultancy.com. I would like to thank you once again for taking the time to follow this conversation. And I would also like to thank our panel of experts who made this difficult conversation, these difficult questions, a bit easier to understand. Thank you.